Okay, Chair, we're now live streaming on YouTube. I'll hand the meeting over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda. Good afternoon and welcome to East Devon District Council's Audit and Governance Committee on the 28th of July 2022. I'm your Chair, Councillor Sam Hawkins, and I'd like to welcome anyone else watching this meeting via the live streaming. Based on the decision of the Council to continue virtual meetings until the 31st of October 2022, I'd like to remind both members and public attending or watching that this Council has delegated much of its decision-taking power to our senior auditor. May I remind members that the Code of Conduct applies throughout this meeting, and we also reserve the right to remove or disconnect any participant who is disrupting the meeting by whatever means. Please turn any telephone devices off or to silent. In the event of a break in internet connection, please bear with us as we try to reconnect. After 15 minutes, if we are not able to reconnect, we will consider the meeting adjourned and reconvene at a later date. If you wish to comment, please raise your electronic hand and wait to be called. Any members of the public who want to view the agenda can do so by visiting our website www.eastdevon.gov.uk. We will now start the meeting by doing a roll call of committee members here present. Over to you, Amanda.
Thank you, Chair. Starting with yourself, Councillor Hawkins.
Present.
Councillor Hookway.
Present, thank you, Amanda.
Councillor Barrow.
Present, thank you, Amanda.
Councillor Brown.
Present, thank you.
Councillor Hayward.
I'm present. Thank you, Amanda. Chair, my apologies. I have to leave at 3:30. I'm so sorry.
No worries. We'll set a clock.
Councillor Kemp.
Present, thank you, Amanda.
Councillor Lawrence.
Present, thank you, Amanda.
Councillor Miller.
Present.
Okay, Chair, back to yourself, and we are quorate.
Agenda item 1, public speaking. There are no members of the public registered to speak. Agenda item 2, minutes of the previous meeting. If anyone has a comment on the set of minutes from the 16th of March 2022, please do this by raising your electronic hand. If I have no hands raised, I will take this as an indication you all agree to the minutes of the previous meeting. As I have no hands, thank you everyone, and the minutes of the previous meeting are recommended to be agreed. Agenda item 3, apologies. Amanda, we've got Councillor Phil Twist, and I believe you had another one?
Yes, Councillor Steve Gazzard.
Lovely, thank you. Agenda item 4, declarations of interest. When your name is called, and mindful of the new Code of Conduct, please state your declaration, including which agenda item your declaration relates to, state what exactly the interest is, and the specific type of interest you are declaring, and this will be done by roll call. So back to you, Amanda, please.
Thank you. Councillor Hawkins.
No declarations to declare.
Councillor Hookway.
None, thank you, Amanda.
Councillor Barrow.
None, thank you, Amanda.
Councillor Brown.
None, thank you, Amanda.
Councillor Hayward.
None that I'm aware of, thank you.
Councillor Kemp.
None, thank you.
Councillor Lawrence.
None, thank you, Amanda.
Councillor Miller.
None.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Agenda item 5, late items, matter of urgency, there are none. Agenda item 6, confidential and exempt items, again, there are none. And now on to the meat of our meeting. Agenda item 7, internal audit 2021-22 outturn, and this includes the Seaton Jurassic Centre's lesson lounge report. And I'll hand over to Adam from SWAP, please.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. In Alistair's absence, I'm presenting the outturn report for 21-22 and the annual opinion report. If you have any queries, I will endeavour to answer them during this meeting. However, where there are any that I cannot answer, myself or Alistair will get back to you after the meeting. First is the outturn report, which is for members to note. This report provides an update on the delivery of the 21-22 internal audit plan, any changes that were made to the plan since our previous update, and also highlights any significant issues identified through our work. Turning to agenda page 12, you'll see on this page there is a list of audits and reviews that have been completed since our previous update. You will note that there is one limited assurance audit that I will bring to your attention towards the end of this item. and also to note is the Seaton Jurassic Centre Lessons Learned report, which has been provided to members in full and is provided at a supplement at the end of this outturn report. Please note that due to the structure of the outturn report, it is shown with the first page twice when combined in the agenda pack. The other audit to make you aware of in this list is the whistleblowing allegation. Due to the confidentiality involved in any whistleblowing allegation, we have not provided further detail in this report or provided a one-page summary at the end. However, I will provide members now with a short summary during this meeting. This was a whistleblowing allegation in the area of property and assets and covered a number of different areas, including failure to comply with legal obligations, improper conduct, malpractice, health and safety danger, and concealment. These allegations were investigated by a member of the SWAP counter-fraud team, and whilst a number of control weaknesses were identified, we did not find any evidence of failing to comply with legal obligations, and it was not possible to conclude whether any actions had been done intentionally or with any form of concealment as per the original allegation. In relation to the control weaknesses identified, 14 priority 2 recommendations have been made following the review and 2 priority 3 recommendations. Okay. Moving on to agenda page 13, this is where I would normally highlight any significant risks that have been identified during the course of our work. Since our previous update, there have been no high corporate risks identified to bring to your attention during this update. Details of the limited assurance reviews are included in Appendix C, which I'll cover later. Turning to agenda page 14, this shows overall plan completeness for the year. Since issuing this report, I can confirm that all audits have now been finalised from the 21-22 plan. Agenda page 15, this flags a change to the audit plan in relation to an ICT audit. We will be keeping this sort of overview of all audits going on throughout the year, and anything that we haven't been able to complete, we will prioritise potentially as part of our rolling plan, depending on the risk assessments that we are completing. Okay, finally, turning to agenda pages 17 to 20, this provides a summary of all the work that has been completed in the 21-22 plan and the individual audit engagements undertaken throughout the year with the assurance rating and breakdown of recommendations by priority score. As I said previously, the report at draft for homelessness has since been finalised and is a reasonable assurance. Moving on to agenda page 21 and 22, this provides a summary of the key findings and scope from the one limited assurance review and the advisory lessons learned. Each review has an agreed action plan in place to take for management to take to address any risks identified. An internal audit will also follow up on any areas that receive a limited assurance to provide assurance to you as an audit committee that the recommendations are being implemented. The housing invoice payment process audit received a limited assurance, and this is in relation to where there is a different system used for invoicing and payments for contractors' work on maintenance to housing. Weaknesses identified in this review included the lack of reconciliations and checks between the system used in housing and finance. We completed an analysis which identified a number of anomalies which needed further investigation. The main risk in this area is inaccurate reporting and potential delays of payments to contractors. Agenda page 22 provides a one-page summary of the Seaton Jurassic Centre Lessons Learned review. The report does highlight a number of limitations as a result of the time that has lapsed since the project was first initiated. However, from the work we were able to complete, we have identified a number of lessons to be learned. We have not treated these as formal recommendations, as we acknowledge that some of the areas identified may have since been superseded by new control frameworks, such as the Council's project management framework, which was adopted in 2017. I do understand there is a member of senior management available to answer any questions on this report. But before we do, are there any questions on other areas of this report?
Sorry, I was causing delays by not finding my mouse. Councillor Arnold.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And this may not be a forum in which this can be discussed, but obviously I hadn't heard anything about these whistleblowing in P&A. Are we in a position at some point to told any detail about this, or what's the position, Chair?
Feel free, anyone, to correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel it's something that could come to us as a Part B item. Bearing in mind that that would be in a private session. I don't know, Adam, if you've got any thoughts on that, or Simon?
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's a difficulty of it being a whistleblowing, isn't it, in terms of limiting what we talk about. Adam's reported the findings. But I understand, to get reassurance, certainly for the chair of A&G and the leader of the council, could I propose that, and then can I propose that I have a meeting with the leader of the council and the chair of A&G to talk through it, and then the chair of A&G decides whether it's a matter that he wants to bring through in further detail to the A&G committee? Would that be okay with you, Chair?
Yeah, I'm happy with the principle. Do you want a formal proposal from the committee?
You can make that as a recommendation if you like.
Recommendation back to yourself.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah. So, let's keep that noted just in case there's anything else, and we can tie it all in, wrap it all up at the end of the item. But I take it you're happy with that, Councillor Arnott? That's an approach. Thank you. Councillor Ledger, please.
Thanks very much, Chair. It was just really a point of clarity, because we've got two teams that are under property and assets. We've got property and assets in the housing, and we've got property and assets within the council. Could there just be more clarity on which department it was?
Yes, if I can, Chair. In terms of the whistleblowing allegations, it's within the housing department.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then Councillor Miller.
Thanks, Chair. On the general issue of whistleblowing, I raised this at a previous meeting. It kind of got a shrug from the chair at the time, which was a bit of a shame. I think that whistleblowing is so important. Other councils, people that whistleblow aren't just limited to the staff. They're extended to partners of the council and councillors as well. And I was disappointed when I raised it last time that it didn't get much take up when I was outside of the committee. And I'd quite like to propose that we extend our own whistleblowing policy to partners of the council, because of course we outsource quite a lot of our services now, and also councillors. We have a whistleblowing policy, but I don't think it's wide enough, and I think it does need to be widened.
That's fine, but it's probably outside of our reference terms to make that recommendation, other than to signpost it to overview. That's not ducking and diving, but it's not our place to change policy. It's our place to ensure the policy in place is being followed. So happy to make a recommendation to overview that they consider the whistleblowing policy, but it's the actual consideration of whether the policy is fit for purpose is outside of our scope.
Well, Chair, sorry, I don't want to. We did have a report that came to the last meeting, which was to consider the whistleblowing policy, and it got about 10 seconds of debate, and then it just moved on. You weren't chairing that meeting, so I would say that it's within Audit and Governance's framework. Maybe it might be a suggestion to bring that whistleblowing policy back to have a look at again, because I don't think it got due consideration last time. I do think it is actually Audit and Governance's role. But yeah, that's just my view, because it did come to our committee last time. I think it should come back, basically.
Thank you. Is there any other views on this? No. No. A second. As I say, I'll come back to recommendations at the end just to keep it all succinct. Adam, I think it's back to you, isn't it, for the next part?
Yes, I think I'm down for the annual audit opinion, but I believe if there's any questions on Seaton, there might be someone else available to answer those in more detail.
Yeah, no worries. Sorry, I didn't know if you were doing an introduction on that item or not. That's fine. Councillor Ledger, please.
Thanks very much, Chair. Just from reading the report and then feeding into our retention of documents policy that we've got online, it states that all cabinet minutes should be held in perpetuity and permanently. but then in the report it says that the minutes are unavailable. So can I just get a bit more clarity on that and why that we haven't got the minutes available? And then just also further to that, if we've got guarantees in place for certain items of equipment within the Jurassic Centre, why are they not available as well in the report? Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, Simon, it's probably over to you as the most senior SMT here.
Thank you, Chair. So, good question regarding the minutes. I highlighted that myself in terms of clarity, because you're quite right, Councillor, in terms of perpetuity. So, in talking to the auditor direct, I mean, we have got, the auditor went back to 2009, which is where all our minutes of Cabinet, Council and major committees are held electronically online. Prior to that, they're held in an S drive and hard copy. So they're more difficult to search for, but they are there. I think it's clarity over what was written in the report in that practically for the auditor to search for them without knowing specific dates to look for, she stopped at the 2009 point. They are available and could have been looked for, you know, if needs be, but practically she stopped at that point in terms of the audit.
Thanks. Councillor Rowland, please.
Thanks, Chair. And thank you for allowing me to speak as a non-committee member. It's on a similar theme, actually, as what Councillor Ledger. I was concerned when I read the report concerning certain Jurassic, just how many papers were not available. And I do think it needs a further deeper dive into find those particular papers. And I'm surprised, I don't know what the current practice is about scanning all papers as well, to make sure there is a permanent record anyway. Because I've got to admit, slightly surprised when I saw that a lot of those papers were not available. I think it needs a deeper dive. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Arnold.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, on the same theme, very much agree with Councillor Rowland. We do need a deeper dive on this. Very grateful to Simon for his explanation that effectively this stops in 2009 or starts in 2009, but the story around seating regeneration begins a long time before that, and this project flowed from that. I'm not on the committee, Chair. Very grateful for you for allowing me to speak, but I mean, I think if I was, I would be suggesting commissioning further work, looking into the seating regeneration project itself as well. I have no idea what records there are left of that. And perhaps, Chair, a suggestion might be that it's a piece of work you might want to proceed with, if it makes sense to officers, hand in hand with scrutiny, perhaps, because where we are now as a council is that we are hoping before the end of the year to be in a position where we can have moved on to another stage with Seaton Jurassic. But where we know we are, and we have to be honest about this, is that the initial project, despite incredible work from local people in Seaton and best efforts from many people, you'd have to mark it as a failure. And it is sad. And that comes with reputational damage to the council as well. And I must admit, notwithstanding Simon's answer, which I understood, I couldn't have been more shocked when I read the report and it was documents not available. I mean, this is precisely, if I may say so, why people like me came in to try and help run East Devon District Council. It's not acceptable, is it? I would be able to take you probably to the British Library and find you the minutes, the original blueprints of, I don't know, the construction of the Victoria and Albert Museum, absolutely anything. Subcommittees, working parties, handwritten minutes, all sorts of stuff. and it won't do that there isn't a decent record compiled in one place here. I do understand under what will be financial constraints for SWAP that 2009 was identified as the point for now. But I would urge, Chair, that the committee finds a way of, as Councillor Rowland has said, let's go back, let's do a deeper dive, let's think about a wider spec for this, possibly even with scrutiny. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Miller, please.
Can I propose that? I don't know how to word it, but what Councillor Arnott said effectively, a deeper dive, look at, try to look at the documents that we've obviously not looked at. And obviously, does it come to us or does it go to scrutiny? I don't know, Chair.
No,
I don't know
I think that is a grey area, and it would be good. I think either we have some kind of, or when I say we, maybe me and the chair of scrutiny have a discussion to agree a working basis for that, because there is overlap. I think there's always overlap with audit and scrutiny that makes it difficult. And as long as we know who's doing what, because we certainly don't want to duplicate efforts unnecessarily. Councillor Hayward, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to echo Councillor Arnott has said, and again, I feel very sorry, Simon. You're the most senior SMT person here, so he's sort of, the one we look to. 20 years ago, I worked in haulage, and we had a problem with PODs, little bits of paper everywhere. And so back in 2001, we started to digitise everything at the infancy of hard drives, when a 20 terabyte drive occupied a small storage container in the car park. But everything was scanned. Every single thing we had, every POD, every bit of paper was scanned, archived, and all that paper just got parcelled up and got put into a warehouse up on a shelf somewhere. And I appreciate there are cost and time limitations for this district council, but actually so many of the things we do could well be looked back on in years to come. Especially, you've alluded there to the Chair, to the issue of guarantees and all sorts of, Councillor Ledger, on the issue of guarantees and warranties. And all these documents, it's just to scan them, they just live now on a hard drive. You back up the hard drive, they're available, they're searchable. I appreciate its time, but I suppose from that is, yes, if you would talk to scrutiny, Chair of Councillor Hawkins, and see if we can just come up with a solution that's workable, that's practical, that's not going to bankrupt the council in any inordinate way, and actually provides us with that history, because that's what we need. And then these sort of things, these conversations we're having today are unnecessary. The people from SWAP will have full access to everything, just search for a term and it will appear. Thank you very much, Chair, members.
Thank you. Councillor Barrow.
Thank you, Chair. I agree. If this is what we all want to do, then I think it's fine. But personally, having been on ANG for most of my time since 2015, I certainly feel it's more, now this report has been brought to ANG, I think it's more a scrutiny look at, scrutiny scope, not to say that we shouldn't have a hand in it and whatever, but I think it's more a scrutiny thing to scope and look at, and maybe look into our own internal bits. It might be that it then comes back to SWAP at some point, or we ask SWAP to have a look at, but I think it's more an internal look at looking for the documents, digitising them maybe, and making sure they're available for future as well. But I think it's a scrutiny look at in the first instance. Thank you, Chair.
No, thank you. I think there's certainly several areas to pick up there. So I've made my own sort of notes going through, and I think we're kind of saying we need to find a way forward to continue looking at, obviously, the Jurassic Centre, then as a separate item, seat and regeneration as its own thing, digital data retention as a historic scenario. Hopefully that should be something that's kind of dealt with going forward on the basis everything's now is automatically generated through PDF. The minutes, I assume, live on the website ad infinitum and the like. And then from other areas, just wrapping up this discussion, then we've got the whistleblowing item to be a discussion between myself, Simon, and Councillor Arnott, with any subsequent either bringing to A&G if felt appropriate, depending on obviously the terms of that discussion. And then the final suggestion had been a review of the whistleblowing policy. I'll happily propose all of that from the chair if Amanda's happy with my woolly comments there. On the basis I can't see her dissenting, if we're happy to do votes with ticks and crosses, please, I think we can move forward. Thank you.
Okay.
So that's unanimous in favour, Chair, to include obviously your additional recommendations.
That's great. Thank you, everybody. And then on to agenda item 8, internal audit, annual audit opinion 21-22. Back to you, Adam, please.
Thank you, Chair. So we're required to provide an annual audit opinion on how well governance, risk and internal control is working within East Devon District Council. This opinion is not a snapshot in time, but a balanced view on how well controls have been operating during the year. And we also sort of take into account past performance as well. Agenda page 32, this is the at a glance view of the Chief Internal Auditor's opinion. There are 4 categories that we use, as you can see from the dial. Overall, we have given a reasonable assurance for East Devon District Council, and the bullet points provide a summary of why we've given that assurance opinion, and that's the guidance to help support it as well. Turning to agenda pages 35 and 36, which highlight how we have reached our opinions with the work undertaken. On agenda page 36, there is a snapshot of our audit coverage against strategic risks over the medium term of 3 years. Internal audit can't give assurance against all risks the council faces, and as an audit committee, you need to identify what are the key risks you want us looking at and what other sources of assurance other than sort of internal audit you may need to help you understand how those risks are being managed by the council. Agenda page 37 shows that no significant risks have been identified during our work this year. There were 3 limited assurance audits that will be followed up during 22-23 to assess progress against agreed actions. Remaining pages of the report sort of provide oversight of the opinions and the recommendations that have been raised, as well as our performance throughout the year, which was also covered in our outturn report. The end of the report is also the summary of all work completed, the opinions and recommendations, again, similar to the outturn report. Does anyone have any questions on the annual opinion?
Thanks, Adam. Yeah, I just wanted to touch on the graphic on the first page. I don't know if it's just the way the graphic produces, but it appears to be a low reasonable. Is that just the way the graphic is, or is it a low reasonable?
It is a low reasonable on this one. As say, we do look at the number of opinions and the recommendations throughout the year, and that's sort of how it's guided. I don't actually have to hand the opinion for last year, and whether the dial was in the same place or whether there's a change in direction on that.
Thanks. You anticipated my follow-up question there. And Simon, just a quick question for you. Obviously, anything internal audit is subjective. Were there any disagreements by SMT on any of the bits that came forward in the year?
No, all reports have been agreed to, recommendations signed up to. Also, I suppose to give audit and governance reassurances, the follow-up reports also come through in your swap papers, so you can keep a track of what management have agreed and then what's been implemented. And also, Chair, what I'm speaking, been talking to Alistair regarding reports going forward, and we're going to do more reporting for audit and governance and our own SMT in terms of total. So you've got oversight of all recommendations for all reports done and progress tracking through. So we're just going to improve that sort of transparency to committee.
No, that'd be really good just to see how things are, when things are signed off. and improved. Lovely, thank you. I don't see any hands of an item just to note, therefore we can note that and move on to agenda item 9, Revenue and Capital Outturn Report 21-22. This is over to John. I think it's a report that's gone to Cabinet previously. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, the report is presenting the outturn report that was presented to Cabinet on the 13th of this month. It covers the general fund, the housing revenue account, and also the capital outturn. There's quite a lot of detail in the Cabinet report around the service area outturns. It gives explanations around variances. Also provides details of proposed reserve transfers, and following these, it gives summaries of the results of those on the balances held by the council. The outturn position that's reported has been fed into the statement of accounts. The finance team are in the final throes of preparing those draft accounts ready for publication. Once they are published and ready to go, the accounts will then be presented back to members at your next committee. Thank you, Chair. I'll take any questions.
Thank you. Looks like you've gotten away with it, John. Nearly. Councillor Barrow.
Thank you, Chair. I was just worried, I would say, about the capital expenditure slippage, especially on HRA. I know we've been through a very, very difficult time, but there's lots of money being underspent on looking after our housing stock. And, you know, we're trying to upgrade our housing stock because with bills going sky high, we need to look after them and make them energy efficient as possible. And if we're actually underspending massively on our capital expenditure, looking after the housing stock, then our tenants are probably having higher bills. So it's not really a question, but it's just, I'm quite worried about that underspend and how are we going to manage it going forward, as we have been through a difficult time. And so as a contractor, I'm not saying it's been easy and it's just happened, but I'm just worried about that. That's all. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Miller, please.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Can I just sort of follow on from Councillor Barron and ask why? Why have we underspent in that area? And I've sort of wondered whether the portfolio holder or somebody here might explain. Because I thought that the HRA was, you were meant to basically spend as much as you could within that budget for exactly the reasons that Councillor Barrow stated.
Thank you. John, have you got anything you can add?
Yeah, if I can, Chair. I think there is an element of sort of earlier in the year, there was still a little bit of slippage in that area, but generally as well, those monies are being put away to reserves. It's not sort of money that is lost in any way. So off the back of like things like the stock condition survey, that will present a sort of more detailed list of those to-do lists, if you like. So that money is being reserved, ready and waiting to respond to that.
Councillor Rowland, please.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to re-emphasise that John Russell read my mind when he mentioned about the stock condition survey that's being carried out, because that is essential, obviously, to identify what really needs to be done with some of the housing stock. And as that money hasn't been lost, I fully expect that to be soon to be being used over the next financial year once we get more information about the stock condition review.
Thank you.
Can I come back, Chair?
Yes, please.
Thank you. I appreciate that the money is being put on one side to use it, but we've also, within this report, seen that the KPIs for the contractor are fairly poor. So it's not just ongoing, even if the money's there, which is great, our contractor is slipping, and that will probably have a large knock-on effect against our residents. So it's nice that the money's there, and I'm not having to go at anyone, but we need to look after our residents, and there ain't, whether the money's there or not, the housing needs to be looked after. And I know we've got this report coming, but it needs to move and move quickly, and our contractor needs, I know in the report it shows that the contractor is aware and he's trying to put plans in place, but it's not happening.
Yes,
Thank
good
you.
observation. Councillor Ledger, please.
Thanks, Chair. It's just really to cover that point. You've got Graham Baker in the meeting that can cover off the stock condition survey. But with all the planned works that's going to come through from the stock condition survey, when we actually receive the data and it starts coming back, it's not necessarily going to solely be awarded to Ian Williams. We will have to work up as packages of cares, and it will have to go through different procurement process. Obviously, Ian Williams being the position that they are the preferred supplier, but we could get programs of works in with multiple different contractors if and when necessary. Really, we need to get that detail in of what the state of the stock is. Then we can actually work out programs of works on multiple different estates, and how we package that up is until we get that data, we don't really know.
No, thanks for that background. Graham, sorry, I apologize. I appreciate you in the meeting, so if you do want to add anything, feel free to put your hand up. Councillor Lawrence, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I understand the problems, but if we've got all this money, I keep being chased by people who've reported severe damage to their properties and everything else, which isn't getting followed up in a very reasonable amount of time. And I look at one case recently where the lady has been in tears on the phone to me because she's reported a problem to the council over the last 12 months where there's rainwater's getting into her electricity box and various other things, and it just doesn't seem to be followed up. And they think, wrongly, obviously, they think it's because we don't have the money available to do the work. And I just think we ought to try and do something a little bit better just to help them and keep them informed that we do care about the properties that they live in, and that we do have the money to deal with serious issues such as electricity. Thank you.
Thank you. Back to Councillor Ledger, portfolio holder, please.
Thanks, Sam. It's just obviously answer Councillor Lawrence's questions there. Councillor Lawrence, if you've got any issues, please email them through to me. I can work it through. We've got a new contracts manager in the team, really helpful and wanting to get all these issues sorted. That money that we've got in the fund is not even going to touch the size. I really need to stress this, that we are going to be absolutely screaming for money come the middle of next year with the amount of pools that are going to have from that fund. There will be no underspend. There is a serious amount of work that needs to do across our stock. It hasn't been looked after properly for years, and we're looking at decades really, that it hasn't been the necessary and sustainable investment in our housing stock. We're going through this process now so that we will have a housing stock for the future, and there is going to be a lot of pools in it. So just to really frame it in members' minds there, that money's not going to go very far, and we're going to be drawing on a lot of different reserves over the next 12 to 24 months.
No, thank you for that context. It's useful. I'd like to invite members just to have a think if they do want audit and governance keeping an eye on this area, just to have a think about what exactly they may want us to review, and something that could come forward maybe at the full plan or carry on from this. Councillor Miller, please.
Yeah, on that point, Chair, it would be great if we could see the contract. I think there was a report to Audit and Governance previously. I think it's really important if we could see the contract between East Devon District Council and Ian Williams. In my view, it's clear that something's not working quite fundamentally. And I don't think it's the contractor alone. I think it's the relationship between the council and the contractor, which I think has failed. And maybe it's being reformed, but I do think it's actually within the purview of Audit and Governance to actually see that contract, whether it's in Part A or Part B. I just think that would be a useful area for us to review and look at, and to just see whether it's working, because I don't think it is working. Thanks, Chair.
Well, thank you. I imagine that's something that can be added to the councillor library. All members then to have a look, and if that spurs a debate there, to bring forward a direct item. I'm not sure we'll achieve anything having just a contract on an agenda saying, please read this, but I fully appreciate actually what you're trying to achieve. If I can leave that then with officers to consider, and if that can't happen, to let me know, or to add to the councillor library as redacted as legally required, I presume. I think that will help, because there is certainly a piece here that I think members do want to follow up, and it's just finessing that so we don't end up with a 50-page report covering every part of the contract, which might not be fit for purpose. Otherwise, thank you, members. I think that's something we can move on to the next item, therefore, and go to agenda item 10, the risk management review, and that's a report presented by Simon Davey.
Thank you, Chair. I won't add anything to what's written in terms of a full review's been taken on board. I hate to say it in front of the Chair that I'm hoping now there are no anomalies in there or officers no longer working for us who are listed. So we have Jo Avery, who does all the work behind this, our information officer. She's been through, and this review, she's actually met in person with each of the risk managers and gone through in quite a lot of detail. So there is quite significant change in the operational strategic risks. So they're presented for your consideration, Chair.
No, thank you, Simon. I think Jo's work does actually show through. It's fair to say, looking through this list, it's now, I think, it's more of a case of some aren't as good as others, rather than some being clearly incorrect or out of date, which is fine. It's a much stronger place to be when it's just comparing an excellent one to a good one, rather than a terrible one with a non-existent one. Councillor Miller, please.
Thanks, Chair. I do this quite a lot when it comes to this LED leisure issue. So I tend to ask the leader whether he's got any update from the MP. And now, of course, you know, there's a new MP in place in Tiverton and Honiton. And it's this ongoing issue with the huge losses that LED made, and it's highlighted in this report. And I just wondered whether he'd had any further conversations with our local MPs on this issue, because I'm not letting this go. We deserve the money back, as other authorities have had the money back. Thank you.
I think that might count as deviation, but I will allow it. Councillor Arnold, if you can do a 2-minute reply, please.
No, I'll give you 15 seconds, Chair. I think it was deviation, no hesitation, and he did manage it under a minute, but no banana, frankly. There you go. So, yes, the last time we discussed it with an MP was with Mr. Neil Parish at 11 a.m. on the day that he'd gone by the next morning, basically. So he hasn't been a great deal of help. He said he was going to be. We have done, I think, 2 follow-up letters to Mr. Jupp, and the last one from memory basically just restated the policy of the government, but didn't say he'd be able to help us any further with that. So I absolutely will, Chair, take this up with Mr. Ford and see if he is able to ask Mr. Sunak or Ms. Truss. They may be able to find a cheque somewhere to send us for the amount of money, and I'm never quite sure what it is. It's sort of 1.4, 1.6, whatever. Yeah, something like that. Simon knows. I would continue with my best efforts, Councillor Miller, but I wouldn't bank on it at the moment.
Sorry for the deviation, Chair. Really,
Thank you for a little sojourn there. I don't see any hands about the risk review, so again, I think we'll note that and move on to agenda item 11, the Auditor's Annual Report 2020 and 21, and that's Jackson from Grant Thornton, please.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. Good afternoon, councillors, members, and everyone present. So this is the first Auditor's Annual Report that will have been presented to the A&G Committee. So this follows the changes to the National Audit Office Code of Audit Practice that we've discussed at previous meetings. So 2021 was the first financial year under this new code. the report in front of you covers arrangements in place in the 2021 financial year. So technically that's up to the 31st of March 2021. So it is a backward look, and what we tried to do is add further commentary to cover, in summary, in certain areas at least, 21-22 arrangements to ensure that it is appropriate and more up to date and reflects progress since the 31st of March. It's important to say there will be a separate 21-22 auditor's annual report that will come to A&G in due course. So the structure of the report follows the NAO's code, and that requires consideration of financial sustainability, governance, and improving economy efficiency and effectiveness as the three key areas of work. Some of those areas won't have been looked at in detail by us as your external auditor for a number of years. And for members who've been on the committee for a few years, you'll see that this report is much more detailed in its commentary than previous reporting under the old value for money arrangements. So there is a lot more commentary and detail included within here. And as we've previously reported, you don't end up with an opinion as such, but you receive commentary and recommendations as appropriate. I think before I touch on some of the key areas of the report, I think it's also important to note that we've got a significant change in approach here within this report, and it's also set against the backdrop of an extremely unusual year dealing with COVID-19 response, various lockdowns, etc., the administration of business grants for a few areas. So there was lots of change and reaction happening within this financial year. Overall, what we concluded was that there were no significant weaknesses in the arrangements for securing value for money. As part of the report, we've included 18 improvement recommendations, which management have given us responses to. The improvement recommendations are the lowest level of recommendations that we're able to raise under the approach. I recognise that there's more recommendations than we would have made in previous years. That's mainly due to that increased scale and scope of the work that I've previously commented on. And given we won't have looked at some of these areas for a number of years, there's a change in our approach. Hence, I don't think you can compare numbers of recommendations this year compared to what we would have done previously on a consistent basis. I think that the important point for members is the overall conclusion of no significant weaknesses in arrangements. Page 3 of our report, which is 53 of the pack, that sets out this overall summary of the three areas and of the recommendations that have been raised. I'm not going to go through each area page by page or each page of our report because it's quite lengthy. I'll take it as read and mention now some of the key elements and then open up to questions, if that's okay, Chair. So our audit plan that was presented to A&G previously raised one area of risk of significant weakness. So significant weakness and risk of significant weakness, just to be clear, that's the terminology we have to use under the NAO's code. So we had a risk of significant weakness with regards to the governance area and the findings of the March 21 staff survey. We set out some detail of that further on in the pack, so pages 56, 57. Ultimately, we concluded the response to this from both the council and members was ultimately appropriate. There was not evidence that service delivery was negatively impacted, nor that governance arrangements overall were ultimately inappropriate. We note this is an area to continue focus as a number of the other improvement recommendations that we've made set out, and also note some of the subsequent action and planned actions within the report. The governance section of our report also looks at some other areas, so links to standards, risk management, and we've just had the risk management report and risk registers on this report, and also internal control, including the work and findings of internal audit, who we've also heard from earlier today. Financial sustainability is again set against the backdrop of COVID, updated budget, and the ultimate outturn surplus that was delivered in 2021. We consider 21-22 planning, medium-term financial plan, and again concluded that based on the evidence we received in the discussions we had, ultimately those were budgets and plans were based on reasonable assumptions at the time it was drafted. Now, clearly, since those documents were presented and created, economic conditions have significantly changed, and those will continue to be updated through the normal course, and we'll consider those updates in future iterations of our auditor's annual report. The final area of the 3 E's, as it's known, so improving economy, efficiency, and effectiveness. This looks at various elements of work such as performance management, some of the benchmarking that's undertaken by the council, significant partnership working, commentaries on pages 81 to 83 of the pack, and the improvement recommendations in this area really relate to the update of some policies and strategies, as well as continued and updated benchmarking and other external assurance via things such as peer reviews. What will happen with the improvement recommendations raised this year is that they will be followed up as part of our 21-22 Auditor's Annual Report, which I referred to earlier. Towards the end of our report, we talk about the audit opinion, and as members will be aware, that does remain outstanding at the moment due to the national infrastructure accounting issue, which is affecting all local government audited bodies with material infrastructure balances on their balance sheet. As a firm, we continue to monitor national updates on this. So SIPFA ran a consultation and further correspondence is coming out via SIPFA. We also, as part of our regular liaison with Simon and the team, continue to talk about the impact on this, as well as the plans for our delivery of the 21-22 financial statement once the draft financial statements that John referred to in his piece earlier are delivered and available for audit. I think that's all I'll say on my presentation, and open up to questions from members, because I'm conscious there's a lot of narrative in the report itself. Thank you.
We've got 18 improvement recommendations. I know you said partially aren't comparable. How does that benchmark against similar size district councils, please?
So it is largely comparable, Chair. I think, especially in the first year, where as I said, we're looking into some areas that potentially we may not have, external auditors may not have looked at since the abolition of the Audit Commission in some areas, I would say, under the old arrangements. So it's not unusual. You're certainly not an outlier in that number. On the face of it, 18 sounds high, but this is across a number of different areas, and as I said, are at that lowest level. It's important just to say as well, if you wanted to I suppose benchmark or clarify, these are publicly available documents. It's on the minutes and the papers for this meeting, and it will be published alongside the financial statements on the website, available for public and stakeholders to see annually.
Thank you. And then another one on the audit opinion. Feel free to tell me this question is asking you how long's a piece of string. Do you know what the time scale even roughly is on resolving this infrastructure assets issue?
So earlier today, I saw a letter which I think has gone to various societies of treasurers, which suggests from SIPFA that they're going to be releasing a further update for September, recognising that a number of local government audit committees are held in September. I think in summary, the conversation that Simon, John and I had earlier this week, I think it was, is there was a consultation that closed. We're waiting to hear publicly what the outcome of that was, and any responses or proposed actions would have to have been agreed by somebody called FRAB, who are Financial Reporting Advisory Board. This is all very boring technical audit and accounting stuff, so I apologise. You did ask the question. Once that guidance is issued, clearly as audit firms and as audited bodies in local government, we will need to read through, understand and digest that guidance. As audit firms, as GT, what we wouldn't want to be in a position is to take a stance that would appear different to other audit firms, and therefore treat East Devon as a GT audit differently to another council elsewhere in the country who was audited by a different supplier. I think this has been going on for a very long time. Our internal view is something needs to happen fairly soon, because we're now, in some cases, undertaking 21-22 audits with this issue still looming over us as well. So it's not as if the local audit market was on track to begin with, and this is only further pushing it out. So I'm not sure just a blanket not signing off audit opinions for a number of years is going to provide any sort of help or assurance to stakeholders, public. Similarly, on a kind of a worst case scenario, I'm not sure a blanket qualification of all local government accounts on an infrastructure balance is also going to provide that solution. So yeah, I think we need to wait. I appreciate it is how long is a piece of string, but I'm aware we've got another committee in a couple of months, at which point I would hope that SIPFA will have provided some further detail on proposed changes. I think the final thing I'll say is that the commentary I saw suggested it's not going to be a short-term solution, so there'll be elements of longer-term solution to this. I wait to see what they actually are.
Thank you. No, I think I agree with your commentary there. If let's say our treatment was deemed to be incorrect, would the council be afforded an opportunity to restate their accounts before the audit opinion is made, or would it be qualified?
Yeah, so that would always be the case. If we were in a position where we believed there was a material error, we would discuss that with Simon and the team. Clearly, they may agree and decide to adjust the accounts. If we were in a position where there was a disagreement, we would still give you every opportunity to I suppose, provide the evidence or the assurance that the accounts were right. I think a qualification is always seen as a very, very last resort, frankly. It's clearly an option, but not a particularly palatable option.
Thanks. And does this have an impact on the fee for 2020-21? We
potentially on 2021, and when you see the audit plan for 21-22 as well, potentially. I think that also depends on what is the answer, because it could impact on the audit fee, but frankly, it could impact on Simon and his team's time and budget as well, because it could be lots more work to eventually get to the number that needs to be reported through the financial statements. So this one issue is very significant, I think, across finance functions in local government in terms of time and capacity, given we've got lots of other things going on as well.
No, that's great, thanks. One final question then, and that's the 21-22 audit work. Are we on track? Behind?
So I think we are in a position where we've got the audit plan on the next committee's agenda. Clearly that's later than we would normally like to, and what would normally happen is the audit opinion would be issued prior to the next audit plan being issued. Given where we are with the infrastructure issue, we've begun and undertaken planning work for the 21-22 audit, which will allow us to present the audit plan. Delivery of that is going to come later in this year. Frankly, I want to get 2021 finished and signed off. But there comes a point, as I've said, if we've got this around the country, we need to start work on 21-22 accounts as well. So as part of the audit plan, which should come to the next A&G committee, will include the timetable there for accounts audit and delivery, and that will also sit alongside the 21-22 auditors annual report, so the value for money work.
Great, thanks. And then the other side of that same conversation, John, is the district council on track for our 21-22 accounts and to be audited?
Yeah, thank you, Joe. Yes, we are. Like I said earlier, mostly the outturn is being done. The team have processed everything they can. We obviously do have that infrastructure asset issue. As things stand, we've carried on as per normal, awaiting any further developments. So yeah, we are sort of just putting the final details into the statements.
That's great, thank you. I'll be quiet now unless someone else has a go. Councillor Miller, please.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to identify a potential quick win for us, page 15, if I'm looking at the right report, on governance, which is about reviewing the allocations of the members to the A&G committee, ensuring it's an effective and independent challenge. And the findings are that we note during 2020-21, there were cabinet members who were also members of the A&G committee, and that this practice continues to date, and this doesn't reflect best practice for good governance and effective audit committees. So I mean, that situation could be solved quite quickly, couldn't it, Chair? And I propose that it does get sorted, because there's 60 councillors on this council. And if we're going to, you know, if we're going to be consistent across all the other committees, that we don't have cabinet members on committees that sort of hold cabinet to account, I think it's only fair that should be for audit and governance as well. And I've read the best practice, and I do think it makes quite a lot of sense. So, you know, that's just one thing that I do think there's a lot of recommendations that obviously take time, but this one could be implemented pretty quickly. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. I just want to point out that slightly. So is that a recommendation to council to revisit the membership of A&G in light of the Grant Thornton and I guess sit for guidance?
Yeah, I mean, it's here in the report, so I think that it's best to be followed. So yeah, thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Just because it's proposed, if I can see if there's a seconder, please feel free to just shout out. Councillor Barrow. I'll save a vote on it, but I just wanted to get that locked in for the votes at the end. Thank you. Councillor Arnott, please.
Yeah, I thought this might be coming, Chair. So I'd normally be one for saying, yeah, of course, this is how it should be done. And of course, it has to be done legally at scrutiny. It doesn't have to be done legally on this committee at all. If I may say so, I think when it was first raised a few months ago, this committee was saved a meeting by the fact that Councillor Hookway was there to chair it. I think it's unfortunate. I think you'll lose some people who know and can contribute to the committee from their enhanced involvement as cabinet. But Chair, I'd happily save your time. If what you want now is a commitment from me that we'll take cabinet members off A&G, then you've got it. There's no need to take it to council. If you want it like that, let me know what the date is of the next A&G meeting, and we'll find some more people to step up.
Thank you. If you don't mind, I think I'll take the steer from the committee on this vote, but I appreciate we can have a conversation and say by the time it gets to the council, actually it's all been dealt with if that's the outcome. Thank you. Councillor Lawrence, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, on the subject of governance, I was just looking at this other recommendation that the council should review its position with regard to holding virtual consultative meetings. Now, I know we've got a plan for a review in the autumn, but that is some 18 months after the remote decision-taking meetings should have expired in May 2021. Are we en route to go back to proper meetings as from autumn 2022, or can nobody tell me?
I think it's the will of council, isn't it, as a body of 60.
Yeah, I realise that, but because it's a recommendation from the auditors that we, you know, what they're saying is that continue to hold virtual meetings in these circumstances may be difficult to justify.
Well, I think it's going back to Councillor Miller's last point. It's in the gift of this committee, if it's so minded to make a recommendation to council to do so. I appreciate that doesn't answer your question, but that is the route forward.
I am new to this committee, Chair. It's my first meeting, so I've got to settle in a little bit first.
Well, it's certainly not a decision that we can make, but it is within the gift of us to refer to council if we so deem it to be appropriate and wish to.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Miller, please.
Thanks. Obviously, I've listened to Councillor Arnott's contribution carefully. I mean, I still think the recommendation should go ahead because it's not about this administration, it's about any administration. I think that if it's first principle, that it should just be consistent. And I absolutely agree with what the leader says as well, that you do lose, for example, Councillor Hayward, who's got expert financial knowledge. You know, you do lose that from the committee. But on the other hand, you know, I think it's either got to be all or nothing. You've got, for example, you know, Exeter City Council, which is a Labour control, they take the decision that cabinet members should sit on planning, licensing and audit and governance. I disagree with that, but you know, that's their decision. I just don't think we should be mixing and matching. I think we've got to take this decision, and I do think the recommendation should go to council because it's not about. I mean, I totally trust the leader that he will take the cabinet members off, and that's no slight on the cabinet members whatsoever. They're valuable members of the committee. but it's, you know, it's about whichever administration in the future. It should be a council policy. You know, it's either have cabinet members on there or not. And then I just think that has to be a recommendation that goes to council. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. We've got one pending proposal. If anybody does want to make a second one, obviously feel free to put your hand up, because I think we're on to our final speaker, Councillor Rowland, please.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to pick up on the point that Councillor Lawrence was making. I did note the recommendation regarding the continuation of virtual meetings, and you're quite right to say that that needs to come back to full council to consider again. I suppose I was slightly disappointed when I read the report, though, that really it didn't give, in my opinion, a balanced view about this particular subject, about also talking about the plus points out of virtual meetings, but just focused in on one aspect of it. So I think you've already answered the question anyway from Councillor Lawrence. It has to come back to full council, but I just wanted to make that point because I had the feeling that may crop up in today's discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Arnott, please.
Yes, thanks, Chair. I can't resist just mentioning this again. If the government has legislated 2 years ago, as it had said it was going to do, around about the time it was going to write us a cheque for £1.4 million for LED, we wouldn't be in this position now. This council is in the vanguard of enabling meetings to happen for people across, and I think particularly equalities issues are at the heart of this. It has run absolutely seamlessly. Now, the only other comment I would make, Chair, and I can't resist making it, is we are having a Prime Minister thrust upon us by a process of the Conservative Party, huge amounts of which have been done entirely virtually. I will listen to the Conservative Party, Chair, when the Conservatives, all 160,000 of them, gather in Wembley Stadium and vote for a new Prime Minister, or any of the previous stages of this process. But as ever, Chair, what is sauce for the goose is not sauce for the gander. So I hope that Council makes a progressive decision in October. It may be that the pandemic is a thing of the past and we've all got, you know, all we have to worry about is our next VAT bill. But let's see, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Miller, please.
Thanks for letting me back, Chair. I note the comments in the, you know, in the report that it may be difficult to justify continuing virtual meetings. And I agree with that. I would like to know, and I see I mean, I'm a big fan of the hybrid solution. How many other councils across the country in England are holding meetings virtually? As far as I'm aware, there's only one. And I think that really leaves us pretty vulnerable. I am not in favour of us going all back in the room, by the way. I just think that we need to move towards a sensible hybrid situation. And I think we need to take these recommendations seriously, and perhaps we should be recommendation. But if we're going to have a meeting in October, then fair enough. There's no need to recommend to council to review our virtual meetings. But I just thought, I think we do have to have consideration, despite the law being an ass and everything like that, that we might be the only council, apart from one other, and potentially not even that council anymore, that are holding our meetings virtually. And I do think that leaves us pretty vulnerable to potential legal challenge. And I think that's a fair view. I might be wrong, but I think we could be. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. I've got two more speakers, and then I think we'll move on. Councillor Hookway, please.
Thank you, Chair. Well, firstly, it depends on COVID, because that's come back again. And also, I understand that the LGA is looking into this matter about virtual meetings, and I would like to see what they say about that before I would make my mind up, personally. Thank you.
Thank you. And then Councillor Brown. You're muted.
That's better, sorry. Somerset Council have just voted to go back to face-to-face meetings. I think that was yesterday, according to the Telegraph. So, you know, I can't see any reason why we shouldn't.
Thank you. Okay, so we've got one recommendation to council, and that is that we review the membership of this committee in light of the Grant Thornton report and subsequent, the SIP for guidance that's been proposed and seconded. So,
Chair, I think it's more direct than that. It's just to remove the cabinet members from the committee, isn't it?
Okay.
With relation to the guidance, we don't need a review. The review's been done, and
right, I'd misnoted it. It's your proposal, so I will take it. And that's also been seconded. So, if I can ask members, please, to vote on that particular item. Yeah, I think we've got.
Okay, Chair. So you have 6 votes in favour and 1 against. So
Thank you,
it's
Amanda.
been carried.
And then we go on to agenda item 12, and that's the contract standing orders update. Over to you, please, Simon.
Chair, just before you move to Simon, my apologies, I've got to leave now. Sorry to members and colleagues, I've got to go. And based on that last resolution, I think it's the last time you'll see me in this committee. Well, maybe it might be one other one. So thank you all for your...
Feel free to pop in for a visit.
Thank you very much. Oh, I certainly will, because I do enjoy this committee very much so. But thank you all, and I'll see you all soon.
Yeah, thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Simon, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Covering report and attached the revised contract standing orders. It's coming to you in terms of updates on. I was holding back bringing this to Audit and Governance, waiting for the legislation to come through in terms of changes to procurement for the UK, because I think there'll be a number of items we'd want to update our contract standing orders for. But I don't, looking at current timescales, I don't think that's going to be enacted now until sort of mid next year. So these contract standing orders have only been revised slightly to take out reference to EU and put in the current UK thresholds that are applicable for where we go out to tender and the rules around that. And I've also enhanced the section on contract monitoring to pick up on swap recommendations from a procurement report they did earlier in the year. So it's the number of tables have changed, but it's basically deletion of EU replaced by just thresholds, and the monitoring arrangements for contracts has been enhanced. So it's for Audit and Governance to approve.
Thank you, Simon. Not to stifle debate, but I don't see anyone chomping at the bit here to talk on this item, so I'll happily move the recommendation from the chair that the committee recommends council that the attached version of contract standing orders is adopted, and ask members here to vote, please. I think that's unanimous. And then agenda item 13, RIPA update. The RIPA senior responsible officer has advised there have been no requests for RIPA authorisation since the last committee. Agenda item 14 is the Audit and Governance forward plan. And are members happy with the current forward plan or wish for any additions, deletions or comments? Councillor Miller.
Yeah, just to check the review of the whistleblowing policy, will that come back then and be added to the forward plan, as because we did review it a few months ago, but as I said, there wasn't a debate, it just sort of went through on a nod. So it's something you've got to ask, isn't it? Because it might not be for this committee, as you said.
As you say, it was a recommendation from an earlier item, so it will do. I'm just looking at the forward plan as it stands. I imagine it might be November if September's as busy as it looks, but if September frees up, there's no reason for it not to be there. It's just we don't all want to be here till tea time. I'm sure everybody will appreciate. On that basis, then I think we're happy to note the forward plan, and that will bring our meeting to an end. And I'd like to thank everyone, including any members of the public watching online, for taking part. However, can I remember all those present that the supporting officer will confirm, and the meeting is no longer being recorded or going live.